Hello, ladies. No.
You have been warned. Let the demonetization process begin!
So, I'm in a class currently called Mediterranean Archaeology, where we were tasked a few weeks ago with writing a paper on the ethics surrounding certain topics. One of those topics had to do with the ownership of scientific research and discovery of material culture in archaeology, go figure. Usually there are two schools of thought on the matter. One a little bit more legitimate than the other in today's current climate, as it were. That either the countries have the claim to the artifacts or that the researchers discovering these artifacts have the claim. Historically, this has shifted, obviously. So for this essay that I had to write, I kind of took it in a different direction than what the professor intended. And because I spent a lot of time and effort making that paper, only for it to sit at the bottom of my desk drawer collecting desk for the rest of all time, I decided that I'm going to repurpose it for a video. That being this video. Because every once in a while, we, the royal we, like to mix things up on this channel, and also I make some excellent points if I do say so myself. Those points were not meant to remain at the bottom of my desk drawer collecting dust. Thank you very much. So I took the paper, spiced it up a little bit, incorporated some graphics, added funny face reminders so that I know when to make all the classic Weebo faces that we all know and love when I read this script that I've written back to the camera. Also, there will be no post-video P.O. box opening thing, mainly because I didn't have enough time to go all the way out to the P.O. box before I had to hightail it back home for Thanksgiving. That's actually what this is. This outfit right here and this hair right here, this is the result of Thanksgiving. This is Thanksgiving post-Turkey Eve, I guess you could call it. That's where we are right now. I've taken my hair out and I am filming a video while everyone is in turkey coma. So here we are. The United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Mouthful, I know. We're just going to call it UNESCO, and it is exactly what it sounds like. An international conglomerate of countries agreeing to certain terms in regards to archaeological findings and to whom they belong. Because that kind of thing is 100% foolproof all of the time. 100%. With absolutely no foreseeable issues, disputes, and/or persistent concerns whatsoever. 100%, right? So these disputes and concerns that don't exist are primarily between nation states and other nation states, and sometimes some busy person researchers arguing that material findings belong to the nation state in which they were found. Sometimes that they belong to researchers who discover them, to the institutes that they are given to, or to the institutes that happen to stumble across them. Of course, every once in a while you get the ye old archaeologist who has a vague notion of what they're talking about, but no true graduate level school real world field experience, pot, meat kettle, arguing differently. Or perhaps you find yourself matched with an internet intellectual who unfortunately lives his delusions. I've come across my fair share. Oh boy, have I. So let's get down to it. I disagree with all of these premises of ownership of discoveries of the past. No single entity can reasonably lay claim to the material culture past, due to cultural pasts being undeniably messy. Now, it's important that you pay attention to the fact that I use the term reasonably rather than say something like legitimately, because legitimately has a rather litigious undertone to it, and well, we'll get to why that doesn't work out too well later. Allow me to begin the image montage with background knowledge about a classic token example of tomfoolery within the story of the history of archaeology. Heinrich Schliemann, born 1822, was a German businessman and a pioneer in the field of archaeology, quote unquote. Also, Homer. You know, that famous blind epic poet who is credited with writing down the story of the Iliad and the Odyssey? Yeah, Heinrich was his biggest fanboy after me. Also, if you look deeper into him than simply just at his Wikipedia page, Heinrich, that is, not Homer, you'll begin to come to the conclusion that Heinrich is kind of, a Bond villain type character. But that's a whole completely different story. We're about to dive into the story of one of Heinrich's most infamous finds. In 1871, our boy Heinrich, well, he decided that a site in what was known at the time as the Ottoman Empire, called Hisarlik, was the site of the legendary Trojan War, the city of Troy, and hence began excavations. Because what do you do when you decide something? Of course, you begin to act upon that decision. Google the epic cycle for more information about the Trojan War and the city of Troy, but for now, that's all I'm going to touch on that. It is important to note that this time period right here was during the moment in archaeology when archaeology as a science was very much in its infancy. Actually, if we're being honest, it was more in its prenatal phase, and as a result, nothing was really excavated or recorded as carefully as it should have been, as it would be today, that is. Of course, in order to learn things, you have to fuck up before you learn those things, in order to know what not to do when you learn that is a bad thing. Savvy? So flash forward a few years in 1873, and Heinrich strikes gold. Literally. As the story goes, Heinrich and his second wife happened upon, by chance, this trove of treasures, jewelry, silver, copper, and gold artifacts of numerous variety of varying significance historically. He called it Priam's treasure. They ended up wrapping it in her shawl, the wife's, and smuggling it out of the country and into Greece, where it was stored for a time until it was gifted to Germany, where it was housed in the Berlin Museum until World War II, when Russia took the treasure, and there it remains to this very day. So, what's the big deal? Why am I telling you this long-winded story about a treasure that you've never heard of and probably never cared about? Well, because currently 4 different countries have laid claim to the treasure, that they own the treasure. Turkey, Greece, Germany, and Russia. Turkey's claim to the artifacts is that they were found in and were legally transported out of what is today known as Turkey. Greece's claim is that they were, stored in Schliemann's house in Athens after he'd exported them illegally. Germany's claim is that they were gifted to the Berlin Museum by Schliemann, and Russia's claims is that they were taken as war reparations for the Nazi regime during World War II. So, the question is, who owns the artifacts themselves? Who legitimately has ownership of the artifacts? Well, most people would argue that Turkey has the strongest legitimate claim to said artifacts. In fact, as of 1970, UNESCO, the organization we talked about earlier, implemented restitution provisions specifically outlining the recovery and return of artifacts to their state party of origin per Article 7b2 of the 1970 Convention. So, case closed, am I right? Well, in 1873, when Schliemann unearthed the artifacts, the region in which they were found was known as the Ottoman Empire. And in 1923, the Ottoman Sultanate was abolished, and in its place, the Republic of Turkey was formed. Thus, we have the current-day Turkish government retroactively laying claim to artifacts unearthed prior to its inception, and, dare I say it, legitimization, if you will. Hey! We've brought it back round full circle, haven't we now? Yeah, that's what they call outlining and planning ahead and foreshadowing. Yeah. God, I think I might edit that out. But we can take this even further. With the Ottoman Empire's genesis itself being in the early 1300s AD, whereas the original date of the artifacts is thought to be at least pre-1200 BC. So, during the Hittite Empire, which collapsed in 1190 BCE after the Assyrians, the Sea Peoples, and the Kaska tribe had trampled the Hittite Empire and established their own rule, culture, and values. And boom, chakalaka maka maka! Herein lies the crux of the issue and what this argument is getting at. The simple fact is that the nature, culture, borders, and governments of any country, any landmass, anything that you could possibly think of are doomed to remain in a constant state of fluctuation, making it virtually impossible for any nation to lay fully legitimate claim to artifacts discovered within them. On the other hand, we have individuals and institutions claiming ownership of findings, Heinrich Schliemann being no exception, as he saw Priam's treasure as his right to gift to the Berlin Museum, who took up subsequent ownership of said items. However, given that they were technically illegally smuggled artifacts, there can obviously not have been a legitimate claim to them in any event by either party if the gift to be received is an illegal one. But finders keepers, am I right? Yes, I'm sure the English adage adopted from ancient Roman law and reapplied to international maritime law is definitely the way to go in such cases as these, right? Now, these questions of ownership are not issues solely faced by Priam's treasure. Don't kid yourself. It's merely an example of a bigger issue. These issues of true ownership can be brought upon each and every single artifact ever to have been unearthed in the history of archaeology. And if I were truly as autistic as all of the internet tests say I am, I would endeavor to prove it in all of these cases just to spite people. Claims by any nation don't hold water due to the precarious nature of the continuity of the claims themselves. And to be quite honest, this extends to individuals as well. No matter how much you think that your skin color gives you ownership of any cultural phenomenon, I can assure you that's a very, very thin ice bridge you're walking on right there. It's gonna backfire in your face, trust me on that. Thus, I argue that no one can simply legitimately own material culture recovered in an excavation. The only thing left up for discussion then, at that point, is who should be given control over historical material culture. And don't mistake what I'm saying. Control and ownership are not the same thing. That's beyond the scope of this video and what I wanted to talk about, however, so I think I'll leave that issue up to you guys in the comment section. What do you think? Who controls material culture, historically, of course, and was my argument compelling enough that it convinced you? If you like what I'm doing here, feel free to check out the links in the description to my Amazon, Patreon, Teespring store. If maybe you don't like me that much, that's totally cool. You can always like, comment, share, and subscribe for more to this channel. Also, don't forget to hit that bell so you actually get notified, because YouTube hates me. Now, if you maybe want to see more of me in a different capacity, I do an RPG-esque D&D stream show every Monday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Magog of Morscar's channel called Sad Quest, and also a bi-weekly stream about the news with segments for advice, call-ins, fanfiction, read-throughs, and more, Sundays and Wednesdays from 7:30 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Some Dumb Americans channel called Two Girls One Stream. Hope to see you there. Links to both of their channels down in the description down below. Peace!